We now welcome former UFC bantamweight champion and current number 11th ranked contender Dominick Cruz. Dom, thank you for the time today, sir.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We will take the first set of questions from Jay Anderson with Cageside Press.
Thanks very much. And Dominic, thanks for the time today. I wanted to start off with the matchup itself. From an outsider's perspective, it seemed a little surprising. You're getting, obviously a hungry young up-and-comer. But as a former champ coming off a title fight, it felt like maybe you get a ranked guy, a veteran guy. Just talk to us about the matchup and why particularly this name.
Well, I mean, a ranked guy, I get that. To say a better guy, I don't really know what that would mean. That would be an interpretation. But a ranked guy, I get that people would think that. But realistically, when I look at Sean Shelby offering me this fight, he put me with somebody on a 3-fight winning streak, and I was on a 3.5-year layoff before I took that title fight. Now, the real question is, would I have fought for the title under normal circumstances, being a global pandemic takes place? When does that happen? Never. And you can never write that ever in a million years that that's what's going to shift a Jose Aldo versus Henry Cejudo fight and close the borders down and lock Aldo out, who'd been preparing for that fight for 2+ months. So I slid in there on 6 weeks notice as, I'd been pushing for that fight because I knew I had a good chance against Henry, and I didn't succeed in that fight. So after a 3.5-year layoff and then I spent the last 6 months training, I think that this is what they gave me. I mean, what am I going to do?
Fair enough. And that should have been a better known guy in that question. But, if you put on your analyst cap for this one, what does Casey Kenny bring to the table that you need to watch out for?
Well, I mean, he started with a grappling background from what I can tell. He's got a black belt in judo, so he's going to have very strong hips. If anybody knows anything about judokas, they're some of the toughest human beings on the planet. They're basically thrown on their head every single day, and they allow it to happen. Mixed with grappling, arm bars, good at taking the back. Comes from the lab with Benson Henderson, who's an extremely good grappler and good guillotines and good back takes, like I said earlier, and works with John Crouch, who's an analytical coach, who I've known for many years. So they know my style. I've got tons of hours of film on there. So they're going to be well prepared for me. I know that. I'm well prepared for them. I've obviously gotten to watch a lot of film on these guys too. And, he's improved his stand-up a lot too over the years. He's on a 3-fight winning streak. He just beat a known striker named Nathaniel Wood. And he's a pure striker, not really more of a grappler. And he went most of the fight striking with him. So he's picked up and he's improved a lot in every aspect. And you got to remember, as a champion, I've faced guys that, weren't ranked in 1 year and they win 3 fights or they win 2 fights in spectacular fashion. And next thing I know, I'm fighting them for the title. So it's all perception. It's all interpretation on who deserves what. And realistically, the ranking has to do with what you're getting paid more than it has to do with your skill set as a fighter. I can tell you that.
Fair enough. And, I asked you to put on your analyst cap there, and I'm just curious. I mean, as you have progressed in your broadcast career, do you find yourself picking up lessons from fights that you watch live in the cage, little tidbits here and there that you can then bring into your game?
Yeah, you can. Of course, it's a learning thing if you choose it, but it can also be too much. It's like if you got an encyclopedia of information constantly going off in your head, sometimes you got to quiet the mind. So it takes balance to be able to quiet the mind, turn the analyst off, and just be in the moment, be present, be in the state of flow. And so it's a gift. It can also be a curse, but I've definitely learned a lot. I started doing it because I was hurt. So instead of just being hurt on the sidelines doing nothing, to be able to have the gift of being able to analyze fights was I'm grateful for it.
All right, and one more for me. You were very vocal about the criticism of Keith Peterson after that last fight. I don't believe the ref assignments have come out for UFC 259 yet, but if he was assigned, would you accept that? Would you try to appeal? I don't know what the options are, to be honest with you, but what would be your play?
Yeah, I would hope that they wouldn't do that. Mark Ratner reached out and said that he could make sure that the commission doesn't put him out there to ref my matches. I don't really feel safe with him as a referee. But you can't control the commission. The commission runs itself. No, it's an outside entity on purpose. So if they decide to do that, I don't know why they would do that, but they might. What can you do? I don't think I could even on the night of, I don't think I could do anything of it if they decided to do that. I think I'd just be in that position. Um, I would love it, even a guy like Mayweather in his fights gets to choose his referee. I would love it if, one day we get that option. I mean, they've got 3 or 4 referees per night. Why not give us an option to choose who we want to ref our fight? And even if me and the fighter agree on it. But, maybe that's the next change in the future. There's been a lot of changes in the sport. Who knows?
All right. Well, I appreciate the time and best of luck this weekend.
Yep. Thanks.
We will take the next set of questions from Cruz with 4 to Win MMA.
How you doing, Dominic? Good to talk to you.
Yeah. Thanks.
Well, how's that fight week going for you right now? How are you feeling?
Um, it's kind of interesting. It's weird because I've never done it. I mean, it's obviously new circumstances. I'm used to a specific protocol in my past fights, and now we're under these COVID protocols, so it's very different. So it's a little bit weird, like I'm doing this interview like this instead of seeing your face, but everything's normal as for my weight cut, as for everything else.
Well, you've experienced this part of the sport without the fans as a commentator, but you've never had it as a fighter, right?
One time,
One time. How
I
how
was
do
the
you
very
feel this is
first
going to
fight.
be?
I was the very first fight in COVID, and I've been in here a lot commentating fights, so I know that you'll hear the commentators and you'll hear your coaches. To me, it's reminiscent of high school wrestling matches when you got like the 2 coaches yelling at you. You got the big light shining down
Right,
in
right.
the middle of the wrestling mat, and very limited fans are at the wrestling meets because of the singlets. And in high school, everybody's scared of the singlets, so there's not a lot of fans. So it's pretty similar to that. It takes me back to my wrestling days.
Well, you're one of the true OGs of the sport. Your career is something that fans and media will cherish alike. Because of the way you fight, the inspiration you gave to the MMA community after your comeback to the game, reclaiming the title against tremendous odds, and of course, because of of your body of work, which includes some amazing rivalries. What would you say is your favorite rivalry from all your career? Faber, Benavides, Dillashaw, or is it somebody else?
Man, I mean, if you think about it, Faber, TJ Dillashaw, and Benavidez was all the same rivalry. They're all from the
Yeah, it's
same
basically
camp.
a you versus alpha male, right?
It was, yeah. So I'd have to go with that. And rivalries bring the best out of each other. So you can't have Batman's got Joker, Superman has Kryptonite and all that's like whoever comes to him, Lex Luthor. Um, you
I'm
need
just really curious about the segue that you're gonna do with Favor and the guys as I don't
He's
know
not the
superheroes.
he's not really the villain. I think I was more the villain at the time back then, to be honest, perceived that way because he was more known than me. But you need that dynamic in order to create the most emotion and the most want and need to see these fights. I mean, look at John Jones and Daniel Cormier. Those were some of the coolest rivalries too. There's so many cool rivalries out there that I'm honored to have had it with them, and they're all like some of the best athletes in the world. So. Um, yeah, what can you say other than that?
Yeah, absolutely. I completely understand that. Well, right now you're in a spot of the card that caused mild controversy. Some people were surprised to see you in the prelims, but you're actually cool with it due to the fact that it brings more exposure, right? Can you comment on what's like for you to compete against an exciting prospect like Casey Kenny in that viewership sweet spot in such a landmark event?
Yeah, I appreciate people standing for me and saying Dominic should be on the main card, but in all honesty, it's one of the most viewed slots on the entire fight card, if not more than the main event itself. I mean, people are tuning into the main card to watch the main event, don't get me wrong. But this is a free fight on ESPN. So everybody's going to be watching it, and it leads the card off like the lead hitter of the baseball game or the lead hitter of the lineup. So I'm excited to be there. Casey Kenny is, like you said, in an exciting matchup because of his durability, his skill set. He's improved a lot in his striking over the last 3-fight win streak that he's pieced together. I've lost my last 2 fights. They were title fights. They were amongst some of the best in the world. So I'm excited to test myself against somebody who's on a win streak. And that's what this is. It's really just a big test for myself. It's not anything else. It's like, how can I challenge myself? The UFC is the NFL of fighting. It's the best organization in the world, hands down, plain, simple, period. And the number one reason is because we are drug tested, I believe. That's one of the main reasons. We're drug tested, so you know there's no cheating going on. It's physically impossible to cheat with USADA on your back, in my opinion. So that makes it the cleanest organization in the sport right now, period. And then the competition is at the highest level too. So I'm excited to be here, and I'm grateful for it. The Lord has blessed me.
Well, sir, best of luck on your fight. On a more personal note, I really want to thank you for bringing so many glory days to the Cruz last name. We share last name, so I might or may not have said that we were cousins on Twitter once. So thank you so much for your time, man, and best of luck on Saturday.
Thanks, Kaz.
We will take the next set of questions from Nikita Gorshenin with Sport Express.
Dominick, big honor to talk to you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Dominick, this year marks 5 years since your masterpiece fight against TJ Dillashaw. Personally, I think the best fight in UFC history. Have you ever rewatched this fight, and have you proud feeling that you were proud of this strategical masterpiece?
I'm very proud of that fight because he also got popped for cheating, and I'm pretty sure he was cheating in that fight. The one thing I'll never forget he said after that fight was, "You got good cardio." That's what you say after that 5-round war. You got good cardio? Well, now we know why. And, it's very interesting to me how it went down. And I look back at it and I think, yeah, it was a special moment in time because I was able to be in the purest most present form of myself in that night. And I look forward to recreating that type of me this Saturday.
Were you surprised with TJ cardio? Because in this fight, he threw tremendous amount of high kicks, and this is very exhausting type of strike. And he just, I don't know, threw 50 head kicks, but he was never tired. Were you surprised with his cardio in this fight?
No, I expect everybody to come in super good shape. That's why I come in such good shape. I expect everybody to be Superman when I fight them. So I prepare to fight Superman. I prepare to fight King Kong. That's the thing about a fight. You're fighting a human being to the death. Do you prepare less for that because of some ranking or some thing? Yeah, he didn't get tired, and now we know why.
Dominick, today we have golden standard of UFC fight of the night when 2 guys go to bloody carnage, just kill each other. But your fight with TJ was without blood even. It wasn't carnage, but it was truly masterpiece. Are you a little bit disappointed that mass public doesn't appreciate such strategical masterpieces like your fight with TJ?
Yeah, I think that what it is you got to really have a good, keen eye for what's actually taking place. I mean, he has very good technique. You can't take that away from him. But he still had the technique to go in there and fight the way he fought. And, mixing up stance switch, high kicks, low kicks, everything. Yeah, it was a very high-paced, technical matchup. And all I can do is give you a virtual hug and say thank you for your respect because it was definitely one of the greatest fights in the history of the sport, I believe.
Yes, totally agree. Dominick, from all your opponents, how do you think who was the smartest one? Joseph Benavidez, Demetrius, or TJ, or maybe someone else?
The smartest fighter the most intelligent fighter that I fought? Is that your question?
Yes. Fight IQ.
Yeah, probably Demetrius. If I'm watching, you got to watch their body of work before, after, during. I would say Demetrius has probably had the highest fight IQ because he didn't take me lightly either. A lot of the guys that I fought from Team Alpha Male, I believe they kind of like took me lightly, overlooked me a little bit at the time. And even Dillashaw, I think he did because of the layoff and the knee surgeries and whatnot. But Demetrius came in well prepared with a good game plan, and he's always, he's just a respectful guy that doesn't look past anybody. So I think that he just came with the right mindset.
Dominic, one question about Cody Garbrandt. Public thought that his performance against you was also masterpiece, and then he lost because he got so emotional. But in this fight, he was calm, cool, collected, and that's why he played so great. Do you agree that Cody's performance against you was masterpiece, or he did the same mistake than he then did with Dillashaw and Munoz fight? What's your total issue with Cody?
Yeah, I think I don't have an issue with Cody. I think he fought on that night was his night. I think that since he was, I mean, you heard all the interviews leading up to that. He's been watching me since he was young, like a kid. And then I had that rivalry with Alpha Male, and I fought all their team while he watched me beat teammate after teammate after teammate. That's quite a fire under you that gets lit. That's hours and hours of watching this champion as I as I closed out the division and beat everybody in the division. Half those guys were his teammates. So you can imagine how often he's sitting there visualizing my style, how to beat my style, what he's got to do in order to get used to my style. That's what being a champion's about, bringing the best out of the people around you. If you're not making people around you greater, then you're not a good champion. Then and that can't happen unless you hold the belt for a long period of time. It was an honor to fight Cody. He fought me really well that night. I think I won 2 out of 5 rounds. He won 3 out of 5 rounds in that matchup. And when I go back and watch it, but he made good decisions. And you're right, he didn't get emotional. He knew with me that couldn't take place, and no excuses. But I was more emotional in that fight. I had to tap into some emotion in that fight to get through some of the pain. I defended my title. I attempted to defend it twice that year. I fought 3 title fights in 1 year that year, and that's 3 of the best in the world. So my body was beat down going into that. My shoulder was hurting. I had plantar fascia tendonitis in both my feet. So anybody who's had that knows that's a very painful thing to have. And with all that, I tapped into a lot of emotion to get my body into it because that was the biggest payday I was ever going to get in the history of my career. So I couldn't say no to that fight because Ronda Rousey was on that card. Anybody knows that if Ronda Rousey or Conor McGregor, who are the biggest pay-per-view draws in the history of the sport so far, besides George St. Pierre or John Jones, or even a Khabib nowadays is a very huge draw as well. Unless you have one of those star powers on the card, I was a champion where you only receive pay-per-view money if you're a champion holding the belt. So the UFC said we want you on this card with Ronda Rousey. My body was not in any shape to take that fight, if I'm being honest. But because of the amount of money that I was finally going to get, I was finally going to get my big payday. I took that fight, and I don't take it back for 1 second. I went in there. It's not an excuse. I went in there knowing the shape of my body, knowing how I was going to show up, knowing that Cody was a young up-and-comer that was ready to go. And I still believed I could win that fight with all my heart, and I was close. I was close to winning that. I needed another round, but it didn't happen. And I'm honored to have fought him. And again, him losing the belt, and I said after that fight, I said, let's see how long he can keep it. Let's see how long any of these guys can keep it. Look back at my injuries or not. Because when you hold the belt, when you defend the belt, you're greater because they have to come. So to me, that's a component of being a world-class champion.
Dominic, how do you think, what year was your absolute prime, technical prime and physical prime?
Man, that's a good question. That's hard to say, honestly. I haven't really thought of that. I would say Saturday night.
Thank you. Dominic, one question about your commentator work. What was the most emotional moment while being commentator in UFC?
Man, I would say probably the last, well, it's a mixture of calling fights of people, like calling fights of like TJ Dillashaw and Uriah Faber and Benavidez and all the guys that I'd faced while my knees were blown out. Calling those fights and talking about how great these guys were when I had to compete against them took a lot of heart for me to move into supporting these fighters when everybody was talking about how, you know, TJ was, you know, this and that, and Faber was this and that, and all the, it took a lot for me to move, set that all aside and just do the job. But, you know, if you're there for the fighter themselves and you keep your ego out of it, then you can do it. So there's a lot of fights to say that. But also the last fight that I commentated was pretty emotional, where Frankie Edgar had his fight against Sandhagen, that same fight card, because it was a month away from this fight. And so to be in here in this atmosphere before my fight, calling fights, talking about other fighters, that was a different experience. I'd never really felt that before. And so that was interesting.
Dominic, has there ever been situation during your commentator job when you prepared for the tournament, breaking down fights, and you completely got idea of the future result? And when the fight played out, and this was the result, and you have the feeling of deja vu, maybe. And maybe example, what was the fight was?
I kind of don't understand the question.
So let me put it that way. You prepared for the tournament as a commentator. You watch fights, you analyzing styles of the fighters, and one specific pair of fighters, for example, fighter A against fighter B, and you analyzing and you got idea how the result will be. And when the fight played out on the Saturday night, it was completely the same result you found when you analyzed.
What was my feeling on that?
Yes, and what the fight was it? Maybe example of this fight?
Man, it's hard to say because I've called so many now, to be honest, which one. And I try not to, I'm not really there to take track of what I do when I'm right, because it's more about breaking down each style. And you got to think of fighters as not as like two puzzle pieces and how they fit together. And that's how I try to look at every fight. And when you watch the film, you got to look for I look for their strengths, and I see how each other's strengths are going to match up. And then I try to explain that to the world so that the world knows what to watch for. That's my job as a commentator, is to explain to the fans and to the public what these two, fighter A and fighter B's gifts are and how they're going to match with each other. And then also to explain for the fighter what their gifts are so that everybody's aware of how good these athletes are. So I've done that with a lot of fights. John Jones, Daniel Cormier. I've done that with Conor McGregor and Khabib. I've done that with, just so many. But I've also had fights where, you get ridiculed for what you say. Actually, to bring that up, to clear that off, here's an example. One of the things that I said and that you see all the time is Conor is trying to gas out Khabib with the punches. That's what
Yes.
I constantly hear. So, and something that Rogan said is, well, I don't think he can do anything about it. And there's a partial truth to that. I did not get my point across accurately in that moment. And so I take responsibility for that. The point I was trying to make in that particular fight is Muhammad Ali sat against the ropes for how long and ate how many punches, and they called it the rope-a-dope. Am I wrong? He sat there, covered up, and just ate shots. Sometimes you don't have a choice because the opponent is just so strong. And Khabib was manhandling Conor McGregor that night. I mean, he just completely owned him the entire fight. At that point, are you really going to waste energy trying to get up? Or are you just going to say, man, I give up trying to waste energy, get up. I'm going to cover up, and maybe for a moment, this guy will punch so much that he takes a breath of air, and then I can use that little breath, that little moment, that little space and time to get back up to my feet. So that was the point I was trying to make. Obviously, you can't gas somebody out getting beat up. But If you call it the rope-a-dope, apparently you can. Muhammad Ali did it with so many opponents. He held himself against the ropes, covered up, went like this, covered up, stuck his tongue out, covered up, and didn't move. This is the same type of situation that I was seeing, but on his back. And obviously it didn't play out. He kept taking a beating. And the main reason is Khabib never gets tired. Let's be honest. He doesn't get tired.
Dominic, the last one from me. You have one of the most legendary mothers in MMA, Mrs. Yusuf Ho, Cruz. What usually the last thing she told you before the fight, when you go to fight?
Before every fight, I pray with my mother. We pray to my higher power, Jesus Christ, and we just ask to be in the moment and be present and be grateful for the opportunity. And that's it. As long as I do that, I'm ready to go do my job. So I'm a mama's boy, that's for sure.
Dominic, thank you very much. We love you. Best luck.
Thank you.
We will take the last set of questions from Damon Martin with MMA Fighting.
And Martin.
Hey, Dom, going back to earlier, you talked about, picking the referee. I'm curious, because you are an analyst and obviously a fighter, who would be the referee? If you could pick your referee for this fight, who would it be?
Honest to God, I don't care as long as it's not Keith Peterson.
So you don't rate anyone higher than the others?
No, I don't. Hey, listen, I didn't come up with this by accident. I came up with this because in the back before the fight where nobody's there, I had a conversation with this man and said, let me go out on the shield. And when you stop a fight with 1 second left, you're not doing your job right when I'm defending myself. So I had to stop him. The referees in the back go through the rules with you. And they're saying, don't hit a down opponent, don't eye gouge, don't hit 12 to 6 with elbows. They're going through the whole spiel. I had to stop him in the middle of that and say, hey Keith, can you go over that? I can't really understand you. And I had to grab him and get my face and look him in the eyes and say, hey, I need you for this fight, right? And he could not look me in the eyes. I don't know what his deal was that night. It might be just that night. I don't know. But that's all I'm talking about is that night. So I had a real issue. I've never had to do that with any referee in the history of fighting, ever. I mean, I've been doing this for 16 years. I've never felt that energy from a referee other than him. So as a result, I don't feel safe with that man. That's all I can say. Everybody else, cool, let's go.
With that being said, with this particular fight, Dom, as a lot of people have said going into this, they were maybe surprised that you ended up getting Casey Kenny, and obviously you accepted the fight, and you're fighting on Saturday night. But do you think that more people should be willing to fight, up and comers or prospects, however you want to look at it? Because we see this a lot. I had this conversation with Beneil Dariush, where he kind of gets frustrated, where some of the top ranked lightweights don't want to fight the guys below them in the rankings. I always want a higher ranked guy. I want that kind of thing. And this is obviously a big chance for him, and maybe people will say, well, you should beat Casey Kenny. He's not at a Dominick Cruz level.
I mean, that's all interpretation, you see? Like, everybody's got their interpretations, but if we start giving Casey Kenny more money, we just move him up in the rankings because you have to, because he's making more money, so you got to face him against tougher guys. The ranking has nothing to do with their skill set. It has to do with the money that they're being made and how many times they've rewritten their contract with the UFC. That's the rankings. That's it. I've had many contracts with the UFC. I'm ranked higher. Casey Kenny is newer. He's on a 3-fight win streak. When he renegotiates his contract, win, lose, or draw in his fights, as long as he stays with the UFC, he'll make more money on the next set. So that's the way this works. You sign for 6 fights, and the money pay goes up if you're doing your job right. I've been doing my job right for many years, so my pay went up. So I'm ranked. Beneil Dariush saying that more guys should be willing to face unranked fighters. I mean, again, that's his experience and his interpretation of the whole situation, which is fine. I'm not opposed to that. But I just got given this fight by the matchmaker and saw that the guy's on a 3-fight winning streak. And I said, okay, the guy's not a chump. If he's on a 3-fight winning streak, let's go. He's winning. Like, let's fight. Let's go.
Do you think it would be better, and I hear this from so many fighters, that maybe the rankings create more problems than they fix?
I don't know what the rankings are, man. I don't really care. Who makes the rankings are the guys that don't fight. Who cares? I can remember being ranked number 2 on the pound for pound list. My goal was to be number 1 on the pound for pound list. And I was so close. But the guy who was ranked above me, I beat for 5 rounds. It wasn't close. It was Demetrius Johnson. And he was ranked above me on the pound for pound list after I'd beaten him. That made no sense to me. But guys who make the list don't fight. So what do they know? They don't fight. They don't know anything. Let's be honest. Guys who don't fight don't know this. They don't know it the way we know it who have fought. That's just a fact. Just like if I wanted to go be in your job, I'd have to do TV for a while. I'd have to ask the right question. I'd have to go be a journalist in school. Wouldn't you say? If I wanted to go jump into your job, would you say I could do your job better than you, Damon Martin?
I would hope not.
It's exactly right. That's what I'm saying. So maybe fighters need to be doing the rankings.
Fair enough. Last one for me. I'm only bringing it up. You mentioned somebody asked you earlier about TJ Dillashaw. I'm going to ask you to kind of put on your analyst hat here. Obviously, a lot of talk has been going on about the title fight this week at Peter Yan and Aljamain Sterling, and who will the winner face next? And a lot of people say TJ should get an automatic title shot. As a guy who fought TJ, and you mentioned obviously the maybe allegations or at least questions you had about what he might have been doing during the fight. Obviously, he's coming off a 2-year suspension. Maybe it's a broader question, but do you think guys coming off a suspension like that should jump right into a title fight, or do you think maybe they should have to earn it?
Man, anybody who gets done cheating should not get a title shot after they're done cheating. Like, what sense does that make? You're going to throw them right back at the top? Makes no sense to me. But again, this is about viewership, not what's right and wrong. Let's not get it twisted. That's it. This is about views, and TJ Dillashaw can fight, and people know he can fight, so they want to get the view. The organization wants to get views. So if they can get more views having TJ fight after a layoff or after a suspension, then they're going to do it because it's about getting the most money in one view. That's what this fighting thing is about. That's what prize fighting is. It doesn't make sense to me to give him that opportunity. And if you really want to dock a fighter that's been cheating, I think that they should have their pay relinquished after they come back from cheating, and their money should be docked in their next couple fights rather than docked for what they fought. Because when you're coming back, that's the real challenge. He's going to get a layoff of 2 years. He got a bunch of stem cells. He got double shoulder surgery. He got a lot of rest. To me, he got a gift. He didn't get a suspension. He got a gift.
Thanks, Tom.
Thanks so much, Dom. That is all the time we had for you, sir. We appreciate it.
Thanks.
And that concludes today's virtual media day. We would like to thank everyone for participating and your supporting coverage. We will distribute video downloads from today's event to your emails as soon as they are available. A reminder, the UFC 249 press conference takes place tomorrow at 2 p.m. PT and will stream on all UFC platforms. Have a great day, everyone.